when you do work with your Kundalini Shakti and life force energy, one of the very powerful biological response is that it does expand your capacity. And when you hold more life force energy, it also means that you hold a higher level of consciousness. And when you do that, is what you said before, you're going to be able to hold multiple truths at once and start seeing things from a non-dualistic perspective. And that's a very, very important, I don't know, skill, if we can call it a skill, but like a human component to be able to have, because then it's no longer about fighting for right or wrong. And you start being able to see people for who they are. You see them for their essence. You can hold them in unconditional truth, but you can also hold discernment and recognize their current limitations and where they are today.
Yeah, powerful.
I will do something. Welcome back to Modern Shakti Files with my beautiful co-host, Leanne.
Hi, everyone.
And hello. And I'm Maia. So a bit of a context. This is a podcast that we have created. We are both Shakti, Kundalini, life force energy healers and teachers. We had several. We had many ceremonial spaces and been working with this energy for the last few years. And this is what we do full time. And we work with our clients one-to-one in energy healing sessions, coaching sessions, mentorships, and workshops. And this is the space where we discuss everything Modern Shakti File related. And what is the topic today, Leanne?
Yeah, so today's topic, we are going into teachings, information, and systems that aren't Eastern. So during the Kundalini Shakti process, you learn a lot of Eastern ways of working with energy. But today's topic is focused on other aspects and other teachings that can support and integrate the Kundalini awakening process. So I know for you, you have a lot of research and knowledge in relation to Kabbalah. And I've never really deep dived into any of that. So I'd be interested to understand in terms of your experience, how has that supported your process from a Kundalini integration process?
Yeah. So this is something that we kind of touched on a little bit between you and me, where we were talking about that there is so much spiritual and new age information available this day and age that without actually really finding very deep and anchored spiritual knowledge and information that holds a strong backbone, it can make this whole new age woo-woo spiritual agenda very confusing and out there. So it's very important in order to support, particularly when we're going through this process of expanding capacity in the body and expanding our consciousness and tapping into higher intelligence, to be able to translate these experiences also in a practical, spiritual way, so our minds can fathom what's happening and how we bring that transformation into our everyday life and those small moments where transformation truly happens. So for me, Kabbalah has been, first of all, this is not a religious teaching. I would translate it as spiritual science. It's mysticism. So it really helps to understand and bring core to all the spiritual principles in a very applicable and modern way when it's being translated correctly. So the systems that you learn that has been very powerful for me is, first of all, the understanding that everything is from source consciousness, right? And that is also a very non-dualistic teaching and perspective. And we also very much experience that when we tap into our life force energy, because we feel the full spectrums of emotions and everything that's moving through us. So we feel that everything is from source. And it's us who decide by naming it, whether that is good or bad. So that teaching is very helpful to be able to implement a mindset in a daily approach to life where we intentionally choose how we name things, and also to understand that our real power is not in what is happening to us, because everything is happening for us, but is how we choose to respond to things. So Kabbalah has very powerful concepts. They call it pose, what a pleasure, for example, or where that's a modern translation to it, where everything, where triggers are happening, to constantly practice and remind yourself to take a moment to pause, which means it gives you space, or it gives space for creation to enter the equation, and name it as something positive, and then respond from that state, which incredibly powerfully translates into the experiences of a life force energy healing, a Kundalini Shakti activation. Because when you work with the body, this is what we do. We teach the body to hold capacity and intensity. So we actually have more of a bandwidth in our everyday life to intentionally pause when a trigger comes around, to be able to elevate our consciousness, name it as something positive, and respond from a higher elevated state. Yeah, so both are very important in order to integrate one and the other. We have to work with the body, and we have to have the intellectual, spiritual understanding at the same time. It's a balance, essentially.
Yeah, powerful, powerful. I do have a perspective on that, which once again, it's kind of like holding two truths at the same time. And I love that perspective, I really do. But what I also find as a challenge with that perspective is that it teaches a lot to not judge. The ability to judge is the ability to judge something as harmful towards you as well. So what is really important is, like, if you engulf them teachings as an absolute truth, you can start to bypass things that are very, very harmful for you, because you're always trying to flip it to a positive side of things. And within us is an innate instinct to defend and to protect ourselves when something is harming us, right? And when you stunt that, because you're always trying to view from this Kabbalistic, it's almost like you're dissociating from your experience, and then you can often fall into the kind of part of you that allows
Well, to some limit, I would say. So this, what I explain, is just a very basic introduction to one of the many concepts to it. There is still discernment and being able to see things for what they are and who they are. But it's like you said, it's very important to be able to look at different teachings and bring the lenses together from different aspects and perspectives to find the truth. Because if you look at just one system and you take one system as the ultimate truth, that's often where distortion can happen. So it's very important to translate it, which also leads me to being quite curious in what other systems have you been using to translate the experiences into truth?
Yeah, 100%. So you might not know, but I'm actually a trained NLP practitioner. So neuro-linguistic. So it's all about language and how language influences life in general, a little bit like Kabbalah. And you go into a lot around emotional anchors, you go into a lot around stories that we tell ourselves. When I started to do my NLP training, another thing that you won't be aware of is that I started doing deep, deep transcendental meditation. And this was not taught to me. No one told me to do this. This was after I'd done my NLP training. You learn about something called timeline therapy. And during timeline therapy is you're going back to moments in time, and you are, in essence, releasing the emotion, the meaning that you're given to certain circumstances. And after I did this training, I naturally, without realizing, would spend hours in deep transcendental meditation, observing my life, observing the emotion and releasing it. And I could literally feel in my body when that was happening. I could feel like more life force starting to come alive, like a sense of deep healing. So NLP training, and as you said, learning how to work with the mind is, as you said, it's something super, super potent and super, super powerful to mastering your energy, because your consciousness is infused with what's going on with the conscious and the unconscious mind as well. So if you're not able to direct that, if you're not able to focus that, so the language that we use changes how we feel in any given situation. So I did a post on this the other day, that when you say to yourself, like, this is really hard, when you say hard, what happens to your nervous system straight away? Contraction.
Yeah, exactly.
When you say this is challenging, it almost invites a power within you, like a challenge. Ooh, a challenge.
Exactly.
And in NLP, you learn the power of language and how
How you
language,
name things, how you
yeah,
choose to name things. Exactly.
how
It's
you,
so
a little bit
powerful.
like Kabbalah. Yeah, absolutely. And this is not like you do this training once and you're a master, because you're not. This is like an ongoing conversation with self, often because our language patterns have been programmed since we were tidgy. Do you know what I mean? Our stories about reality have been programmed since we were tidgy, and all of these things in our field, they often happen beyond our awareness. Our nervous system is always interpreting things half the time beyond our awareness. And it's always being mindful of, like, what is the language that I'm using and what are the stories that I'm telling myself. And you know, half the time you can get caught in a fucking story and you can really, really believe the story and you get yourself all riled up. And then you realise, Jesus Christ, I've just caused my own suffering there.
Yeah.
So NLP and coaching and working with a good coach that can challenge your thought processes, challenge your perspective, challenge how you frame things, and the ability to frame things, because how you're framing things is impacting how you're feeling.
100%.
So that for me was a powerful process that I went through, and something that I continue to remind myself of as well. So this is not just for me, like, this is an ongoing, repetitive process that I do. And if you think about, like, the subconscious mind and the nervous system, the way in which we have new neural pathways and new patterns is through repetition. It's not, this happens and boom, I'm completely changed. It's like, if you've got belief systems about yourself that have been hardwired from a very, very young age, that you've repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated, and you repeat on an unconscious level, it's not just gonna, like, bang and it's gone.
Yeah.
This takes repetition to be able to do that. And you know, something in your reality, you might think, I dealt with that, I overcome that, and the same situation pops up in your reality all over again, to reintegrate the learning, maybe see it from a different angle and a different perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually part of the spiritual teachings as well, that when our soul elevates, we also, like, the challenging the negative force is something that constantly elevates with us. So we can change or rewire something or respond differently to something out of choice. That doesn't mean that it will never repeat again, because then there's a new layer to it. And this is a very powerful teaching too, I think, understanding the feminine current, or just generally how feminine energy moves, that nothing is linear. And therefore it also translates into how we are experiencing our growth and everything that's happening to us in a nonlinear fashion. So things do come back and being revisited over and over again. And once again, that applies to the fact how important it is to be able to have an open mind to look at different perspectives and systems and to be able to see and seek truth and understanding from them. Because when you do work with your Kundalini Shakti and life force energy, one of the very powerful biological response is that it does expand your capacity. And when you hold more life force energy, it also means that you hold a higher level of consciousness. And when you do that, is what you said before, you're going to be able to hold multiple truths at once and start seeing things from a non-dualistic perspective. And that's a very, very important, I don't know, skill, if we can call it a skill, but like a human component to be able to have, because then it's no longer about fighting for right or wrong. And you start being able to see people for who they are. You see them for their essence, the source consciousness that we all are. You can hold them in unconditional truth, but you can also hold discernment and recognize their current limitations and where they are today.
Yeah. Powerful. And I think like it's the childlike part of us that struggles to hold multiple truths. And I'd say for anybody that is listening to the podcast, when you start to hold more light and you start to expand, we all have a desire for certainty. We all have a desire for certainty. Like the nervous system loves a bit of certainty. And when you find a teaching, you can go, that's it. That's the teaching. And this is what I was saying before about discernment, Mia. It's like, when you're in them I'll call it a vulnerable state, because when you're going through this, you can be vulnerable. You naturally just want to go, that's it. That's the way of being.
I got it now.
That's the rule. And live from that.
Yeah.
And do not practice. Or actually, how true does that feel for me? Because remember, every single one of us is meant to think, believe, feel differently, because it's intrinsic to us, to our being. And I remember at one stage, like, I listened to I don't know if you've ever heard of the book Conversations with God. No?
I recognize it, but maybe not. Okay.
Maybe this is one. Conversations with God is by a book called Neil Donald Walsh, and it's a series of this person talking as though they're having a conversation with God. The way that I describe it, it was almost like it unraveled all of the conditioning that I had around life. So it would say things like, who told you that relationships had to be a certain way? And it would start asking all of these like probing questions where I was like, like I was unlearning everything in real time.
Yeah.
But then I'd find Joe Dispenza, for example. And then I'd be like, oh my God, that's it. That's the one. Joe Dispenza, that's the one. Like, that's his teachings. That's everything. That's as far as the spectrum goes. Because based upon my consciousness at the time and my capacity, that's the only perspective that I could hold. And their level of certainty made me feel good.
Yeah.
I would definitely say as well, like Joe Dispenza's work from a cognitive point of view, it helps you to process logically the spiritual and energetic experience. So Neil Donald Walsh is a book I would 100% recommend, and then Joe Dispenza's work, I think I spoke about this on another episode. They are two kind of books that are non-Eastern that I would invite you all to check out if you're trying to explore multiple perspectives. Equally, taking on too much perspective at once.
There's a double-edged sword in everything.
Is very overwhelming for the nervous system. Very, very overwhelming for the nervous system. So I used to have the type of nervous system where I would listen to a book and it was almost like I was downloading it into my being. And then what would happen in my brain is it would be like a lens changed in my brain and I just see the world from this new book that I've just read. Very bizarre. But too much information without integration, without reflection, without judgment is very overwhelming for the system.
Yeah.
So if you
That's
can actually...
very, very important to take
Yeah,
time. Like it's not just ceremony. Information
yeah,
needs to be integrated too.
yeah, exactly. And it's like
Yeah.
if you are going through this process, make integration, make information a choice. And what I mean when I say that is, like, I know that at certain stages of my process, it was almost like this engulfing energy where I'm like, more information. And it was almost like it was driven by something that wasn't a conscious choice. It was more this desire for power, for more, almost like maybe like a trauma response. So it's like,
There are a lot of those spiritual traps along the way too. That
yeah,
once you kind of start opening up to the ego or the negative force, whatever you like to call it, finds different ways to disguise something else, taking on another identity of like the spiritual persona. And identity is another identity that we have now
yeah,
created.
yeah,
It all kind of comes in these cycles.
yeah, 100%. How did
Talking
you
about,
go on?
yeah,
Sorry,
sorry,
darling.
go.
No, you go.
I was going to say, talking about looking at understanding different perspectives. So what you said about the biological perspective to understand how this energy works from Joe Dispenza's explanations is very powerful. So that's another thing I think that we kind of would like to highlight. So beyond the Eastern teachings, that is very powerful to explain what Shakti Kundalini is. Tantra is also very powerful to really explain what this energy does, but it can feel a little bit mystical in some shape or form for a lot of people, or a little bit coded. Being able to look at other systems, like understanding it from a biological or a nervous system perspective, what is actually happening in terms of life force energy expansion, really helps to bring things into perspective, or even understanding the language of subconscious patterns and how to recode them and change them, whether you do them through NLP or you implement spiritual scientific principles like the ones I was talking about.
Yeah.
And there is the other systems too, for me, that has been very interesting in the last few years is I also, I love human design and astrology because
Oh,
it
yeah.
really, yeah, because it really helped me to comprehend how unique every single person is. Because the deeper you kind of dive into and you start understanding yourself and your unique blueprint, I'm not talking about, what's your sign? And that's astrology. This is why people don't take these things into account, because it has been washed and filtered so badly. People don't actually understand what astrology or these systems actually are, because there are so many different points. Like, it's a map. You need to learn how to read the map and look at every single planet, every single sign, every single house. Same thing with human design. Human design actually brings together several different systems. So it looks at astrology, qigong, Kabbalah, the energy systems, in order to give you one map. So that's, again, goes back into the fact that we need to learn to look at things through several lenses to see the truth, not just one
Yeah.
system. And the more you understand how unique your blueprint is, because you take time to study, to understand how you are wired and why you are in a certain way, why you have that personality, that desire, or experiences in your life that you do, which can be translated through astrology, through human design, or even by studying Kabbalah deeper and understanding your soul negativities, they're all going to connect. Then you also start having more compassion and understanding towards other people, because you understand that each of us having an incredibly unique experience, and there's absolutely no way that what you think and believe is the only truth.
Yeah, 100%. And that is such a powerful thing. And I don't think I've exposed myself to that side of things as much as I should. On another perspective, modern psychology is something that I have studied. So I have a level 3 diploma in counselling skills. So last year I did lots of hours studying on different psychological models.
Love it.
And that was super, super powerful because you learn about different stages of development of children and how that then translates into an adult. So like, you know, like Sigmund Freud and stuff like that, you study all of the different modules, you learn about different ego defense mechanisms and how they can show up, like denial and things like that. That made me, I'd say like that gave me a really grounded point of view in relation to just normal humanity and human beings. And what I mean when I say that is, prior to going through a spiritual awakening, I used to think that psychology was governed. It's not, you know, like nothing to do with psychology is governed. You can decide one day to wake up and be a psychologist, and there's nothing that governs that. Psychology
Good to know.
and everything in psychology is it's a theory, the same way as everything else. It's like an actual theory. And in my mind, like in my ego, prior to going through all of this, like you think, no, psychology is the thing, and that's the thing, and blah, 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 blah. And you just realize actually, like, it's just a theory that somebody came up with. And it's when you can start to, as you said, piece together all of these different theories, it gives you a broader perspective of like humanity and yourself. And like there's theories to do with like when children develop, they think they're part of their parent. They don't actually realize that they're separate from their parent. And it's only until like they're maybe 2 years old or whatever before they actually realize that I'm not this person. I'm my own unique person. And then they have to start to develop all of them different things. It really, you know, it helped me to integrate some of my own personal experiences growing up. It helped me to realize how, so that there's something called three core criterias that we all need to have in order to feel, you know, like heard, valued, listened to. And that is like a person has empathy. And how many people do you see walking around that embody empathy? Barely any. Congruency, which means that you are who you say you are and do what you say you're going to do. And unconditional positive regard. And that is people believing that when you are, you know, maybe making a mistake or you have a lack of awareness, that you are, you're doing it with good intent. And how many people actually get treated like that? Can you understand why we live in the world that we're in when there are 3 core things to have like a nourishing, successful relationship? And for a lot of people, like growing up, they've never experienced that before. They've never experienced being in the presence of somebody like that before. And you know, all of these, it was really helping me to integrate, you know, like the inner child and understand through the lens of my upbringing and all of them different things, and seeing a psychologist for years.
Okay, that's interesting. So I never been to therapy myself, which is a very interesting perspective. Yeah, I know. I mean, I don't have anything against it. I think it's incredibly powerful. But all the work, essentially, like my transformation has been incredibly self-led. And through my own research, through sitting with myself, through diving deep into rabbit holes and understanding different systems is basically how I changed my whole life. Like give up my addictions and
powerful.
Like it's lifetimes away, you know, when I look back and like 4 or 5 years ago, which is another very powerful thing to look at, that we are all heading to the same direction. And there are so many different ways that we can reach there. There are so many different tools and paths that we can take, that we're supposed to take based on our unique
Class.
blueprint, what we meant
Yeah.
to be here to experience and learn and study. And actually, I just wanted to add to the psychology part that even though I haven't been to therapy myself, I have studied psychological concepts because I love to do research. And a very powerful thing that has dropped into me, and I also notice how incredible it is to support a non-dualistic spiritual perspective, is understanding the triangle of dysfunction, right? In relationships, because that's with every single person and how we show up in any connection. And I'm talking particularly about, for those who are not familiar with it, we're talking about a triangle where you enter a relationship dynamic. You take on one of these roles, and if you do take on one of these roles, it means that you're constantly going to kind of navigate between these roles in that dynamic. And it can be quite hard to escape unless you become, again, conscious and aware of it, right? And we're talking about whether you are acting as the hero or the savior for someone, or you're showing up as the victim, the one who is always being wronged, and the world is just doing unfair things to, and everybody's wrong. Everybody is just X, Y, and Z, and you refuse to take responsibility for what is happening to you. You're a victim. And then the third is the villain, right? We all need a good villain, someone to blame. So that's a very powerful perspective too, because that really helps you, like, once you start seeing that there is actually nothing that you can do sometimes in people's stories or in your connections, in your relationships. For some people, they're going to look at you as the best person and human being ever existed. And some people, no matter what you do, you're going to be an asshole. You're going to be the villain, irrespective. But how can you actually find who you truly are and stop seeking validation or view yourself based on the perceptions of others?
Oh, yeah.
Because
100%.
exactly, because if you believe that you are a good person based on the fact that a lot of people agree with you and like you and praise you, you are still outsourcing authority to other people. Because you need to be that safe and anchored and sure within yourself and who you are and your connection to source consciousness. That doesn't matter if people praise you or hate you. It's all the same. If the whole world would hate you, you would still know that the only connection that matters is the one within. And these are like the concepts, that we really need to run through. And whether you do that through psychological understanding, which is super powerful, it helps to put things into perspective. Again, translates to stop following one system. Be what's the word? Inquisitive. When you read something, when you read an Eastern teaching about a concept, ask, I'm curious how this concept translates in this system. What does psychology say about it? What does this system say about it? And really start bringing things together.
I love that. That is so powerful. And I think maybe one last subject that I'd like to touch on is, and this might be a little bit different to stuff that we've spoke about, is herbs. Herbs and plants. Yeah.
Okay.
Herbs and plants.
Just the way you said it. Herbs.
Herbs. Throughout my journey the past few years, I have been called to work with certain plants and herbs on the lands that I've been staying in and eating certain things. And like at one stage, I lived in this castle. It was beautiful, and there was a apple tree. Yeah, 33 Wilton castles, 33. I manifested a castle. And so there was this apple tree on the land, right? And I just loved this apple tree. Well, there was multiple apple trees. So I'd go with my basket and I would get all of these apples and I cooked it and I made apple sauce and I'd just sit and eat all of this apple sauce. But it was almost like, my intelligence was like, this is for you. The land is giving these as medicine for you. And I would just get these little intuitive things to do where, like, I just knew one day I had to buy some like herbs for my feet, and I just sat in like a bath full of herbs for my feet. And I work with the herb nettle. I think you call it a herb or a plant, nettle. And I literally like I wash my crown with it, and then my
Yeah.
crown feels and so like working with
Mhm.
different plants
Yeah.
and
Powerful.
herbs, natural things, and learning about what they do for your body and for your vessel as well, and how they support inflammation, healing, all of them different things. Super, super important and super powerful. And like it was almost like I just get little intuitions and pulls and tugs. Allow that.
Yeah.
Like it's part of your unfolding and your journey and part of your knowledge and your toolkit. And yeah.
That's the thing. Like when you start seeing everything as consciousness, you start seeing that there is intelligence in the elements. There is intelligence in the plants, in what Mother Nature gives us. And what you're talking about is actually something I have done myself. This is why I was just giggling a little bit. Like I didn't put nettles around me, but I know I know this spiritual path with plants because I've done several dietas myself. So I sat with rosemary, for example. So I've done like a free week, a 21-day dieta with rosemary. And like you
Wow.
said, the intention is very much to consume, to connect with the plant and with the frequency of it, because everything around us holds a very particular key and intelligence and spirit that once you're being called or drawn to connecting with something deeper, whether that's a particular type of tree, they have very different elements and frequency. It's usually something that your soul is kind of ready to either remember or unlock within yourself.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
Powerful. That was a good episode. Good conversation. Should we leave that there? Yeah?
Yeah, I think so. Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for joining, and we really hope that it brought you a perspective and just a different way to see things, and not to necessarily feel that you have to do things so black and white. As you see, there are so many ways to get to where you are going, and the main focus and purpose is really finding that self-authority and truth within yourself, where you can learn to discern. And by working with your body, you're also able to receive information and intellectual, spiritual knowledge that either supports you, but the compass is always within you to be able to tell if this is right for you or not. Different systems have different ways to get you to the same direction, and discernment is truly what's going to make the biggest impact. And if you have any questions, or there's any other subjects that you would like us to touch on, please don't touch us, not without consent. That's not what I'm implying here. It's not that kind of show. Please leave a comment.
Thanks, guys.
Yes.
Thank you for dialing in. Sending love.
Thank you. Bye.